Hi everyone, I'm here to talk to you about something I had hoped we had time for in class tonight, but obviously we ran out of time with all the great presentations. So I will ask you to watch this video so that you can get a quick introduction to how to pronounce ED verbs, and then we will go over it in class on Wednesday. So, let's start at the top of the screen where I have listed out the vowels that we have in the English alphabet: A, E, I, O, and U, and sometimes Y. And the only reason I list these is because please be aware that right now, when we're talking about verb endings, we will mostly have consonant sounds at the end of verbs, not any of the vowels. And a lot of the English verbs end in E, and as you might know, or you're reviewing with me right now, the E is often silent. So even if the E, the vowel, is at the end of a verb word, like to make, I make my dinner, the E is silent and I have a consonant sound at the end of the verb. So then you see in the next section I have a list of some voiced consonants. These are letters that are not vowels, and some unvoiced consonants, and I've paired them together because these are the ones that kind of go together with the way that we pronounce the sound with our mouth. So let's just go over a few of these, probably just two, and then we will go over the rest in class so that you can see the way that I'm pronouncing them. But for now, you'll just hear. So let's go over the first pair, pair number one. We have the letter D and the letter T. So if I have, if I'm trying to make a D sound, I'm making the sound D. I'm making the sound with my mouth and with my throat, with my voice box, the D. If I put my hand against my throat and I make the D sound, D, 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 I can feel a vibration. I can feel movement in my throat. So I know the D is voiced because I have to use my voice box to make that D sound. But if I make the T sound, the unvoiced consonant, the sound is coming only from my mouth. There's no sound coming from my throat at all. I have T, 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 T. And I can hear the T sound coming out of my mouth. If I hold my hand up to my throat, there's not any vibration or very little. Let's look at pair number three, the G and the K. Again, a voiced consonant has requires two sounds from my mouth and from my throat. So G, 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 mostly in my throat, right? But my tongue is kind of shoved up to the top of my mouth to make that sound. G, G, G. My tongue is going up against the top of my mouth, but my throat is making the sound too. And I know that because when I put my fingers on my throat and I make the G sound, I can feel a vibration in my throat. But when I make the K sound, K, 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 it's lighter and it's just in my mouth mostly, okay? So it's unvoiced. And so we'll practice the rest of these in class. The B and the P are a really good one to practice too. So the lesson I'm trying to teach you about the ED ending, I'm going to scroll down, is that if you have a voiced sound at the end of the verb, it sounds like a D. So I take the verb judge, and to make a past tense, the reason I would add the ED at the end of the verb judge is to make it a past tense verb. I know it's voiced, so it's going to sound like the D sound, judged, judged. And the D is not, the E is not pronounced, it's silent. It's just there to separate the final consonant of the verb, and that D we're adding to the end, the ED we're adding to the end of the verb to make it past tense. So it's pronounced judged. And I want to point out that I've heard a few of you pronouncing this judged. So that's the difference. You don't want to have to pronounce the E sound when we do the past tense verb. It's just the judged. All those last consonants are kind of smushed together. Smushed means to push them all together, and the E is silent. Boil becomes boiled in the past tense. An L is a voiced sound, so it sounds like boiled. And try. So sometimes Y is considered a consonant, and in this, is considered a vowel. So sometimes Y is considered a vowel, and in this case, we are going to consider the R a voice, because is a voiced sound, and definitely will be pronounced like the D when we turn it into past tense. So try turns into tried. So we have judged and boiled and tried. So voiced consonants at the end of a verb sound like a D, the way we pronounce D in English. When we move down to the next group, the unvoiced, so remember, here are all the examples of the voiced consonants. You don't need to memorize them, you can just kind of get used to them. Here are the unvoiced. This means there's not as much sound coming from your throat. Most of the sound of the letters being pronounced are coming from your mouth. So unvoiced. If I have a verb that ends with one of the unvoiced sounds, it's going to sound like a T. The ED is going to sound like a T. So let's look at a few examples. Shape. The P sound is unvoiced. I'm pronouncing it P, P, P. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that very well on the video, but we will practice it in class for sure. But my lips are making the P sound, and there's no sound coming from my throat. So when I make shape into a past tense verb, shaped, you heard that T sound, shaped, shaped. And the E is silent. It just connects the last two consonants at the end of the verb, and it sounds like a T, shaped. And then type. Oh, I have a typo. I've mistyped this. Let me fix that. Sorry about that. Type in past tense, when we add the ED, becomes typed, because P again is unvoiced. And then my last example is pick. When I turn the verb pick into a past tense verb by adding the ED, it's pronounced picked, picked. The T sound is what we hear when we pronounce the ED. So there's one last group of verbs that's not represented in my voiced and unvoiced chart that I showed you before. If your verb ends with a T or a D, then you're also going to pronounce it as the D sound. It would be almost impossible for our mouths to make two T sounds at the end of the verb when they end with a D or a T. So we want to use the D sound. So fade becomes, in past tense when we add the ED, faded, faded. And want becomes, with the ED in past tense, wanted. And create becomes created. So, with this little pattern, you can think about verbs that end with the voiced sound or the unvoiced sound, and the group of verbs that ends with a T or a D sound, and try to help yourself to pronounce those ED words more correctly. And I've only heard a few of you do it, but this is a good review for everyone in terms of pronunciation, which is something we will be practicing a lot in the speaking and listening class. So, your homework for next time is to look at that 2-paragraph handout that I gave you from the beginning of a story and circle or underline the words that are words that have ED endings. Most of them will be verbs. Sometimes they will be a different part of speech, but it doesn't matter. We can use those words to help us to practice. And I would like for you to underline or circle them in the handout, and then see if you can practice those words before class next time. And then we will also practice them in class to make sure you got it. All right, so that's the end of the video. I will see you guys in class on Wednesday night, and want to just say very quickly that the presentations were so nice, and it was so nice to get to know a little bit more about you and where you come from, and to hear you speak in class. I'll see you next time in class.